Сайн байцгаана уу хүн үзэгчдээ. Өнөөдөр манай дефакто нэвтрүүлгийн зочноор Хонконгийн Авлигатай тэмцэх хараат бус комиссийн дэд захирласан мөн тэдний үйл ажиллагаа хариуцсан хилцээний дарга байсан ноён ТОНИ КВОК оролцож байна.
ТОНИ КВОК Улсын авлигын эсрэг зөвлөх. ТОНИ КВОК Хонконгийн их сургуулийн профессор, авлигатай тэмцэх салбарт нийт 44 жил ажиллаж, дэлхийн 26 оронд ажиллаж байжээ. Тэрээр Хонконгийн авлигын эсрэг бие даасан хорооны дэд даргаар болон Азийн хөгжлийн банкны засаглалын нөлөөлөх байдлын үнэлгээний зөвлөхөөр ажиллаж байсан. ТОНИ КВОК Монгол улсын авлигатай тэмцэх чадварыг сайжруулах, техникийн туслалцааны төслийн гүйцэтгэгч багийн зөвлөх ахлагчаар ажиллаж байна.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
So how many times you are now visit to Mongolia?
Actually, the first time I came here is 2007. I was asked to help to start the Independent Authority Against Corruption, IAAC. And then I came about a few times, about 13 times altogether. Up to the last time I visited is 2010.
Okay.
2010. So I haven't been here for 9 years. Yeah.
Okay, 2010.
Yeah.
And it's now 13 times.
Yeah. This is the 14th time.
14 times. Okay. Now, Mongolia became a member of that convention, which eventually brought the country to creation of this anti-corruption agency. And we have already, 12, 13 years with this commission.
Yeah.
How do you see the result of that commission?
Yeah, of course, I am only aware on the first 3 years from 2007 when I started to 2010, and I helped them to get it off the ground, so to speak. But actually, I remember there's very interesting statistics. In 2007, according to the public opinion survey, 74% of the population consider corruption very serious. And when the time I left, 2010, it was 64%. So still not so good, but at least, so it seems to have dropped about 10%. But afterwards, of course, I don't really be able to catch up so well. But on this particular occasion, I have been here for a few days, so I talked to a lot of people, and the general perception is that the IAAC is doing probably not as good as the public would expect. They are still performing a meaningful function. And apparently, I was told that the corruption appear to have a bit reduced, particularly on the side of petty corruption, according to the public opinion survey, but still corruption was considered serious by the public. That's my perception. Maybe actually you know better than me.
It's even, I think, now it was 2007, 2010, now if you ask now, 20, say, next year, I think corruption will be, the perception will be even higher. Probably to the 80% probably will
I
go
see, okay,
as petty corruption is gone more or less. But there are bigger corruption, in particular, connected with political party financing, through which they are buying power. The people who has money, who are manipulators, that's what the situation.
I will, of course, will try to find out, because I'm here on a mission sponsored by the Asian Development Bank, and the whole purpose of the mission is to identify the enforcement aspect, the effectiveness of the enforcement. So we are talking about how effective the IAAC, how effective is the public prosecutor and also the judiciary, whether they are able to bring sufficient deterrence to tackle the corruption problem. So I would probably be able to give you a much better answer 6 months later.
So you will be more studying, and after 6 months you will make a report.
That's right. I make a report identifying what I perceive to be the problem and making recommendations how the things can be improved. Yes.
You know, I'm writing about corruption for the last 10 years.
Okay.
And following all major cases.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in Mongolia. Recently, they have been arresting even the ex-2 prime minister,
yes,
ex-minister of finance,
yes,
heads of several state-owned enterprises, etc., etc. But after 1 month or so, after detaining them, they are releasing it. No explanation to the people.
Yeah. Oh,
When they arrest, they give some explanation, but we don't know what happened afterwards.
yeah.
And you are talking about enforcement. This is
Yeah.
clarifying where
Yeah.
enforcement is to be made. The weakest point of Mongolian corruption fight today is actually enforcement of law. And that's very bad information, because that means enforcement agencies are connected with all this thing. That's the immediate conclusion that one would made. So tell us about the role of prosecutor in the work of anti-corruption agency.
Yeah.
I'm asking it because, say, 2 years ago, they sent some 400 plus cases to prosecutor to take it to the court.
Yeah.
But majority of them are refusing. If it were refused, the cases, only some 20 went there and nobody get punished. How come? What is that? And what's the role of prosecutor in this case?
Well, of course, this is something I need to look into it. Yeah, so I'm unable to comment. But firstly, I want to make some little observation about when you talk about some of the big fish cases, when they announced of the arrests, and then 1 or 2 months later they released the detention. And there's no further news. But I would have thought, from my own experience in Hong Kong and also in overseas, it would be practically impossible for any anti-corruption agency to be able to complete an investigation on this kind of big fish within a month. So my guess is that the fact that they have been released from detention does not necessarily mean that the investigation have been curtailed, have been finished. If the investigation is finished, I'm sure the IAAC owe the public an explanation. And the fact that they have not made any explanation is the fact that the whole case has actually continued to be investigated and is probably not desirable to explain why and how they're conducting investigation. So this is one point I think people should not be misperceived by that one. On the prosecutor side, prosecutor play a very important role in combating corruption. If we have good, competent prosecutor, then you have a more chance of success in fighting corruption. Then on the other hand, if you have incompetent or even corrupt prosecutor, then they clearly would be the main stumbling block to fighting corruption. I think it's quite timely to give you an example in Indonesia. If you follow the news, in Indonesia there was now a student protest, a massive protest. The massive protest was because they were against a new law passed by the parliament, which appear to sort of stamp down the power and the independence of the anti-corruption agency, called it KPK. In English we call it KPK. KPK. And KPK was a very good example for other anti-corruption agencies to follow, because they appear to be quite a reasonably successful anti-corruption agency. Indonesia, we all know, was very, very corrupt. Very, very corrupt. So eventually in 2002, under a lot of pressure, they set up this independent anti-corruption agency. And through a lot of pressure, they give them the power, wide power. They can have wild tape, etc. And they do the job. And when they did the job, they found that one of the stumbling blocks are the prosecutors, because they did a good job and they put up, they file evidence and go to the prosecutor and it's got blocked. And they got blocked. So what happened?
That's what is exactly happening in this
country.
So
you can learn from Indonesia. So what happened? They changed the law. They give the prosecution power to the anti-corruption agency, KPK. So they allow them to employ qualified criminal lawyers as advisor and prosecutor for them. So it means that they do the investigation and they employed specialist lawyers to consider, to design the prosecution and do the prosecution. And then they come up with another problem. So when they go to court, they have this kind of, again, probably corrupt judges. So it means that, again, the case was delayed in court and went nowhere, and then the conviction rate was very, very low.
What is happening here?
Oh, so you can learn from Indonesia. So what happened? So they set up special court, and they choose the correct judges, which go through the integrity checking. And they can also employ that outside criminal lawyers to be the judges. So they have this special court to deal with all these corruption cases. And you know what happened? The conviction rate is over 90%. From previously about 50% to 90%. So this is something which is really worth as a case study for Mongolia.
Yep.
But then what's the problem? Because they have done the job so well, and they have arrested so many big fishes like the members of the parliament, the politicians, political party. So apparently they upset the political parties. So they just recently have a new election, and they have a majority political party, and they quickly passed a law on the
cut down.
How did they cut down? Firstly, they set up a oversight council. The president can appoint a 5-member oversight council who would supervise the anti-corruption agency. So it's no longer independent. You actually have a president people, which of course president come from the political party, 5 persons supervising the capital. And the second thing is that if the anti-corruption agency wants to get a wiretap in the past, the Director General himself can authorize. Now he said that you have to go to the 5 members council to get the authorization.
To tape somebody.
Before you can do any wiretap. So of course you reduce the power, and also you can expose the confidentiality of the cases. And thirdly, very similar to the Mongolian case, they have a law of cessation of all cases. So he demanded that all the existing cases, which has been ongoing for 2 years without charges, they should all be dismissed. So is it similar to this statute of limitation?
Yes.
Yeah. So same thing. And what happened? All these university students, youngsters come out to make big protests, public protests. And so much so, the president said that he's going to hold off the legislation.
So they will close it.
They want to hold off. So this would be really good. So from that one, you can say that what are the problems which are actually not tailored for Mongolia. I've been to 26 countries. Most of them are corrupt. So the problems are well shared. I tell you, the number one problem is whether there is genuine top political will. Of course, every leader will say that I have political will to fight corruption. But whether there are genuine political will, I tell you, there are 3 ways to measure whether the leader have political will. The first is whether they provide sufficient resources to the anti-corruption agency. You compare with Hong Kong. Why Hong Kong was successful? In Hong Kong, the anti-corruption agency, we have 1,400 staff. 1,400 staff. Okay, yeah. Hong Kong's population is 7 million. Okay. Mongolia, 170. Mongolia have a population of 3 million, right? So if you say that Hong Kong is a good formula, they should have 700 rather than 170. Of the 1,400 staff, we put 1,000 as investigator. So Hong Kong, we have 1,000 investigator. Of course, we investigate everything. We investigate government, we investigate business bank, we investigate election bribery, we investigate everything. But we have 1,000 investigator. How many investigator you have in the IAC, Do you know? I know better than you. They only have 30. 30. So how can 30 investigator be able to investigate all the corruption cases in Mongolia.
Okay, so first, sufficient resources.
Second is the legal environment. Means that they need the adequate law and they need the legal power. Well, I mean, you know better than me. You analyze the law. They just we have this problem of statute of limitations. I mean, this is a bad law. This is a bad law, right? I mean, you allow people who are found to have the cash bound in the lake, and they can go scot-free.
In the socks, yes.
Yeah, in the sock, and then go scot-free. No, so this is a bad law.
Some 400 cases are going to be disappearing.
That's right. That's right.
To this law these days.
Yeah.
So whether they will make them continuing or not, that's what the parliament discussed, and we don't see any results so far.
So it means it's similar to Indonesia. The third one is political interference, whether there are a lot of political interference. So if there are political interference, if they receive a file, if they receive a complaint from the public and there's political interference, you cannot investigate that. In Hong Kong, if someone tried to do that, they would go to jail for perverting the course of justice. We just have a case only 1 or 2 years ago. We have a very high-level politician. In fact, he is a member of the China, the National People's Congress, right? So we have Hong Kong people, about 30 people elected to be the member of the China's top legal body, national. And then what happens? He had a company in Hong Kong. The ICAC Hong Kong, they investigate his company. He called up. He made an email to the chief executive of Hong Kong. He said, I am an NPC, I'm in the Congress member. They should not investigate me. Ask him to stop. So what happened to the chief executive? He passed this email to the ICAC. And ICAC sent an officer the following day to arrest him, prosecute him for perverting the course of justice. And then he was sentenced to 20 months imprisonment. So that is the important. When you talk about independence, and then you talk about political interference, right? So there's no independence. But independence is very important. Independence is to guarantee.
So that's very important thing just to explain to my audience that in Mongolia, I think every second is happening that somebody influential is calling to judges or anti-corruption, stop it, this is my...
So in Hong Kong, it's an offense already.
If you will call it, that's already offense.
It's already an offense.
And the guy goes for 20 days in prison at least.
20 days, 2 years imprisonment.
2 years.
In fact, there's no maximum. Perverting the course of justice is a common law offense. So it can be sentenced to life imprisonment. But in the case I quoted you, that guy was sentenced to 2 years imprisonment. Just by making an email. By making an email, said, I want you to stop my investigation. And then got 2 years imprisonment. So that's the law Mongolia required, that there is a law called perverting the course of justice. And this is a law which is recommended by the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. Because the United Nations Convention knows that these are the problems, that there must be a law to prevent political interference.
You know, this whole corruption cases are stopping our development. And in particular, when nobody is convicted, they destroy people's belief, trust in this governance system. And that makes non-confident them in their tomorrow. So people are running away. They go to work to other countries by all means.
I know.
Korea, Sweden, Europe, by all means. Let's talk about.
Let me talk. This is very important. When I talk about that, the ICAC has 1,400 staff. The people write, oh, Hong Kong's very rich. Of course you can afford it. We are not so rich. We can't afford it. Let me tell you, the ICAC's budget, the anti-corruption budget, accounts for only 0.18% of the entire government's budget. This is a very important thing. I mean, 0.18%. So this is very important. I mean, you understand as an economist, right?
Yes.
Because how much money the government could lose
Yes.
to corruption?
Yes.
How much, for example, budget? At least 10%, isn't it? At least they lose more than 10% in budget. So does it make economical sense that the government devoted 0.18% of the budget in fighting corruption, and then you can save 10% of the budget? Of course. But maybe you can check for me.
Yes.
What is the budget of the IAC? I would believe, because it's same as many of these corrupt countries. Yes. Probably 0.01%.
0.01%.
Probably, I may be wrong. Yeah, okay, yeah.
Like
but you
any
can check.
other corrupt country.
Yeah, no, most of the other country. Yeah. So it means that this is a very interesting point. That you have the leader say that I want to fight corruption, but I'm only prepared to give you 0.01% of my budget to fight corruption. Whereas I would put 5%, 10% for my security.
The head of anti-corruption agency in Independent Commission against Corruption in Hong Kong, who is nominating that head and how long?
This is an interesting point. Don't follow the Hong Kong example because Hong Kong followed the Singapore example. Singapore was the first to set up anti-corruption agency, and then Malaysia, and then Hong Kong. So at that time we followed the Singapore example. It's not the best because when we say independent, is that we are directly answerable to the chief at that time, the governor. So the governor appoint, and the government can dismiss, and the governor can dismiss. So this is not the best system, because if the governor is good, or the chief executive is good, then you're okay.
Yes.
But if the prime minister is no good, well, I don't mind you saying, for example, Malaysia. If the prime minister is no good, then the anti-corruption agency is no good. So don't follow. In that case, don't follow the Hong Kong's example.
Okay.
But we were able to maintain good independence because we all the time so far we have good chief executive. Clean. Chief executive. So this system can maintain. But there's room for improvement.
Our problem is it is nominated by the president. We want to change it. No, not yet change. But it depends on the president how much integrity he has, right?
That's right.
Yeah, and at certain times we find that the presidents were thinking about their own wealth rather than the people's wealth. In that situations, I mean, all this works really like, it's just like show. Though there are some people who really try to have justice in the country, but somehow it is not working, and I'm glad that you have mentioned
the most important is the security of tenure of the head of anti-corruption agency. If the head of agency often feel insecure that he can be dismissed anytime.
That's what happened
by anyone. Then there is no independence because he will be subject to interference, right? So what you need is a system that you should avoid that. So what I've been going around, I think the best system would be something like, for example, the president set up a select committee and then select the right candidate, and then the president agree, and then give it to the parliament. And you have the parliament's sanction, right? And when the parliament sanction, then the president appoint, and then appoint for a fixed term, 3 or 5 years, okay? And then in this 3 or 5 years, he could not be dismissed unless, except under the kind of impeachment process. So it means that only the parliament, through a 2/3 majority, can impeach him. So it means that he doesn't need to worry about anyone. But if he have grave misconduct, the parliament can impeach you. So that would be an ideal system from my experience.
Everything is happening just on the opposite.
Yeah.
For example, you have said, and that is very important for Mongolia, to create selection committee.
That's right. Yeah.
Otherwise, the guy is single-handedly picking up somebody. That later on he explains why he has picked it up. So, but this is a good idea.
And the selection committee must be transparent. For example, in Philippines, the selection committee, the whole process is transparent. So you have 5 candidates who wants the job. They would publish the 5 candidates. And then the public can make objection. Okay, so then the public can say that this one, he had problem of this and that. So the committee are obliged to look in all these public objections. Okay, and then they should carry out a hearing, like in US, right? Open hearing. So the individual candidate has to answer questions, right? Open on the television. And then when they make the selection, of course, that will be subject to the public's opinion, right? Whether this is a fair one.
System,
That's
yes.
right, yeah. So actually very simple. You've got to be transparent and accountable. This is 2 key words.
Can I ask another question, just maybe a little bit aside, but in some countries there is an ombudsman system.
Yeah.
And even one person can be an ombudsman. What's your take on
Ombudsman
that?
is good. I mean, it's just an additional system to help to ensure the integrity of the government. In Hong Kong, we have the ombudsman. So there are 2 distinct roles. The ombudsman deal with administrative complaints, deal with administrative problems, right? So it means that if you have a public official who are lazy, negligent, and then fail to account properly, misuse of the public fund, misuse may not, okay. So any administrative, then you cannot prosecute him, then that would goes to the ombudsman, okay. And then if it's involving in criminal liability, corruption, fraud, then the anti-corruption agents deal with. So it's a very, very clear, distinct line. Of course, they have good partnership. Okay, yeah, and you also have an audit commission, for example.
On the other hand, very important in Mongolia to make the difference between ombudsmanship function and when it comes, the crime becomes criminal, then it goes to the anti-corruption agents. Before that, it's just not yet criminal, but still kind of disciplinary actions can be made.
Yeah, that's right. So it's very clear, distinct line. Hong Kong works very well.
That's what is missing in Mongolia, no?
Is it that you don't have an office ombudsman?
Yeah. So probably this is the institution we may need down the road in Mongolia. Okay, because it's a short interview, I would like to ask you a question, since you have been a part of that operation head, and your team were discovering big fraud with the largest that time commercial bank in Hong Kong. And Hong Kong was actually one of the most corrupt country at that time. Today is one of the leading non-corrupt country. What is the secret on that? Yeah, okay. So that's the main message I want to bring in Mongolia, is that basically it can be done. Hong Kong was very, very corrupt, probably one of the most corrupt places on earth in the 70s. We describe corruption as from womb to tomb. From the day you're born, the day you die, you have to pay bribes. From womb to tomb. Okay, but now, of course, Hong Kong reason. So basically, it's, as I said, you have a competent ICAC. Okay, you have the political will to support and resources and everything, and then you have a good strategy. And the strategy we have is that we were the first ones to come up with a 3-pronged strategy. So it means that you fight corruption, enforcement, very important. But equally important is prevention. You try to ensure the system are efficient and accountable. And then also public education. Probably also very, very important to change the mindset of the people, so they will not pay bribes, for example. So you need a comprehensive 3-pronged approach to fight corruption. And then another very important thing is partnership approach. You can't do it alone. Everybody will be involved. So when I was here, I thought one of the greatest achievements I have is that I was able to convince the Prime Minister to have Prime Minister's workshop. And the Prime Minister's workshop, the function is to require every ministry and government department to come up with their own anti-corruption action plan, annual action plan, which should be reviewed every year. Yeah, okay. And then that means that you give the responsibility to every head of ministry and department that they should clean their own house. I know. And it's under supervision. Unfortunately, I don't know what happened now. I don't know whether it's still ongoing. But if it's ongoing, I would expect every year there should be some gradual process, right?
Yeah.
Like many Mongolian government plan, they do once and they forget it.
Yeah. So
And they always somehow our government is always talking about the future, not about the current, about the past.
Yeah. So that would be unfortunate, because I thought that was one of the.
What would be the other countries? You have been bringing a lot good cases. What would be the situation in Mongolia comparable to other countries? What would be that country?
I mean, I would say that Mongolia certainly are not among the worst. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you look at the corruption perception index, more than 70% of the countries are below average. Average. So actually, not many countries actually can claim themselves to be reasonably clean. And Mongolia, I think, is still struggling. Yeah. But it's not the worst. And what I'm trying to say is that I would have confidence in Mongolia, if they are given the correct political will.
Correct political will.
Yeah. And the people's support, of course. Yeah.
The last questions.
Yeah.
Why corruption? We should fight by all means. Why?
Well, then you have better answer than me. It's quite clear. I mean, we all know that corruption attack the rule of law system, and that it attack the democracy system. It attacks the economy, and you create unfairness and the people's integrity. I think this is not so important. Everybody knows the corruption is bad. I mean, the problem is that how to fix it. And whether they're determined to fix it. This is what we should concentrate.
Sir, the conversation we had, if properly understood and used, would be already a good contribution towards fighting corruption in this country. And I thank you for your work, doing that for already many years, consulting this anti-corruption agency. I would like to thank you very much.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
За хүн төлөвчтэй өнөөдөр манай дефактоны төлөвийн зочноор манай энэ авлигатай тэмцэх газрыг зөвлөгөө гэж байгаа. Хонконгийн энэ авлигатай тэмцэх газрын дэд дарга байсан. Хонконгийг хамгийн их авлигатай орноос хамгийн бага авлигатай орн болгох гээд маш чухал үүрэг гүйцэтгэсэн ийм эрхэм хүн ТОНИ Kwok орцлоо. Баярлалаа.